Now, I guess. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Technology for Good Hangout. This is the 14th episode of the Hangout, and our guest on the show today is Andy Piper. Andy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Tom. So I'm Andy. I'm a hacker. I'm a developer advocate and a technology advocate. I currently work for a little company called Twitter, but I spent 10 years with IBM, and I spent the last 2 years with VMware and then Pivotal working on Cloud Foundry and cloud platforms. So I'm kind of all over the map in terms of technology interests. I was involved in the London Green Hackathon that was run here a couple of years ago. I'm involved on the edges of the London Clean Web meetup that your regular guest host, Chris Adams, is involved with as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of you guys and Green Monk and Technology for Good.
Excellent, superb. And why have Twitter got a developer relations program? What's going on there?
Well, simply that we've got lots of products, APIs, and there's some mobile SDKs and things like that, and we want to make sure developers have a great experience with them. So that's really all there is to it. It's the same with I think most developer relations and advocacy exercises. We want to make sure that we have a great community, and certainly when I was at Cloud Foundry, I spent a great couple of years helping to build up an open source community and really promoting the community to others and getting more people involved. So that's really what it's all about. I just want to help people have fun with technology, make sure that it works for them, and listen to their feedback.
Awesome, good stuff. Okay, we'll hit into the stories, and as always, the first story in the show is going to be a bad luck story, and we'll hit from there into the better news stories. And the first story is about the acidity in the Pacific Ocean rising and dissolving the shells of key species in the region. So how that's happening is that the carbon we're pumping into the atmosphere is being dissolved in the ocean, forming carbonic acid. This makes the ocean more acidic, and then you get keystone species like this pteropod whose shell is dissolving, and this affects its ability to reproduce and survive. And this species is a species which lots of other animals rely on as a food source. So it's never good when a keystone species is affected by something like this. It can have massive effects throughout the ecosystem, and it's just another indicator that we have to reduce our carbon output. With that in mind, we move on to story number 2 for today, and we've mentioned it before, but I just wanted to circle back to this one. Esri, the GSI company, have announced their Climate Resilience App Challenge. They announced it a few weeks back. You can see the dateline there is March 10th. And the reason I want to circle back to it is I had a few questions about it, so I talked to the Esri guys about this challenge. And it's a hacker's challenge, it's a hackathon, it's an open challenge, it's a global challenge. So any developers can sign up on this page. The links will be in the notes afterwards. You can sign up, and the prize money for developing a climate challenge application on the Esri platform is you get to, I think there are 3 prizes of up to 15,000. There you go. First place, 10,000. Second place, 5,000. Third place, $2,000. They say that it's a prize of cash and or software. And when I asked them about that, they said that the prize was cash, or if you're like a government employee or somebody and your employer doesn't allow you to take a cash prize, then you can take a software equivalent. But the prize is cash initially, and if not, then software in its place. The deadline is June 2nd or that's the closing date. Competition closes on June 2nd. So you can sign up now. Create your application, and the closing date for submission is June 2nd. One other thing about it is I had a question for them about the IP, and they said that all the entries are being submitted via GitHub. So it's all going to be open. The IP remains with the developer. So it seems like one of the better hackathons I've come across, I have to say. The other thing of note is that everybody who signs up to join the hackathon they get a year's free subscription to the desktop to Esri's desktop GIS application. So it seems to me like a good competition. Andy, what do you think about this one?
I absolutely. I think we've found already that many of the great ideas in this space, in terms of crowdsourcing ideas, getting people together to actually build applications for good. I think of things like Mastodon C, which kind of came from that original London Green Hackathon actually that I was involved in. So we've seen some really great things emerge from this space. A cash prize or some kind of incentive is a nice addition. I don't think it should be a requirement for a hackathon, but certainly if you want to really get people to think hard about how they can make improvements, that's great.
And justify spending their time as well.
Exactly. And I'm really impressed with Esri. I met, or I didn't meet with actually, but I was in the audience of Amber Case, who was one of the leaders at Esri. She was acquired, her company Geoloki was acquired by Esri a couple of years ago. She gave a great speech last week at the Craft Conference in Hungary about company culture, the ability to use agile tools like GitHub and really spread that kind of move fast culture through the organisation that acquired her. So it sounds really promising. I agree. I think that's a great idea, and I'll be really interested to see what kind of things come from it. I wonder how much engagement they've had already, because they're really a month or so into the hackathon already. So you might expect, although not necessarily, that a bunch of code has already been written. So I hope there's some good ideas out there.
Yeah, likewise, and I'm hoping to get some of the Esri guys as guests on this show in the coming weeks, so that's definitely a question I'll be putting to them when they come on. The next story I wanted to talk about was the IBM Watson. This is their big artificial intelligence platform, IBM's big artificial intelligence platform. They've now released it as a platform. Up until quite recently, it was a kind of standalone. You could get access to it, but now they have rolled it out as a platform. They're rolling out APIs to it. They're trying to get people to develop mobile applications for it as well. And they're looking at different kind of areas where it can help in things like retail, but also in areas like healthcare, which is one of the ones they went for at the very start. And I think they're going to be looking at things as well like climate and weather and those kind of things. So I guess the interesting part of this is that it's such a powerful engine, and having and opening it up to allow developers access to develop applications to run on top of it, particularly mobile type applications. It's a bit like the hackathon thing we were talking about a second ago, Andy. It's going to be really fascinating to see what people will come up with in this one too.
Exactly. I was at IBM when they did Watson initially, and they did the Jeopardy challenge, where they famously put Watson on against human champions of Jeopardy, and that was just amazing to watch. And one of the first areas they did go up against, because the idea is that you load knowledge into it, and it becomes this kind of deeply knowledgeable, very fast analytics engine for answering questions that humans would have had to spend months reading and researching through all the materials. So they did, as you say, go after healthcare first, and I think they've done some work around finance as well. But it's really clear that with complex models around things like climate, you do need to take account of a large number of different sets of information. I was watching a program here the other day. It was one of those with a catchy title like Britain's Worst Storms or something, one of those kind of link bait TV titles. And they were talking about the fact that one of the worst storms in history that was recorded in the sort of 17th, 18th century was extremely damaging, and also the 1987 storm was extremely damaging, not because at the time, because we didn't understand the weather system that had caused it, but now they've identified there's a particular kind of I think they kind of described it as a scorpion's tail in the cloud system that you can see. But back in '87 even, and certainly 200 years ago, when they couldn't even see the weather patterns like that, they didn't understand what this meant and how the weather patterns had come in. So it's clear that by applying more intelligence and more information to these kind of problems, we can learn a lot more. I'm very interested as a developer, as an API person, as someone who potentially builds mobile apps, to see just how accessible the systems will be. Is it going to be some kind of simple RESTful API that's easy for developers to understand, or is it going to require a lot more investment of time? Because clearly that's another aspect of it, and it's a complex system.
Yeah, obviously, and I suspect for any developer there'll be a huge learning curve into getting into something like this. But as against that, if you have an idea that that an engine like this can tackle, I think it's got huge potential. Moving on, I saw slightly changing topic for a second. I saw Google have decided to stop scanning student Gmail accounts for ads, and this is something they've been doing for a while. It's how they monetize Gmail, and they're talking in this article about as a result of an investigation into them and some kind of court case that went on, they've decided now that they're going to stop, and this is in their Google Apps for Education. They're going to stop targeting those for ads, and there's speculation that they'll do it for a couple of others as well. It's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, I see how people are very unnerved about having their email scanned to have ads dropped into it. On the other hand, there are paid solutions for email out there. If you're not happy with that, go off and get a paid solution. I use Gmail. I don't usually access my Gmail through the web interface, so I never see the ads that are delivered. On the other hand, Google are seeing my emails, I guess, scanning them, and if I did go through the web interface, I would see some of those ads. And should I be worried that Google is scanning my email? It doesn't bother me all that much. It's something I've kind of, I don't want to say grown up with, because I've been using email since the late 80s, early 90s, but it's something that I've become used to since I started using Gmail back in 2005. Andy, what's your take on this?
Tricky one. So, like you, I'm not particularly bothered. I do use the web interface extensively. One of the things it mentions here is obviously both Google Apps Google for Education, importantly, because there's an element of invasion of privacy for youngsters potentially, but also that they would stop. They're going to stop doing this potentially for business, so enterprises using Google Apps, and for government. And those are kind of areas I would hope that they already weren't particularly mining, because both of those constituencies are obviously paying Google a lot of money for the use of their services in that case. So the advertising doesn't seem particularly appropriate in those cases. But no, I mean, look, there's so many online services today that we take for granted and are quote unquote free, which use our information or use some element of our information to target us with other information, whether that's advertising or alerts or whatever else it might be. A mobile service might know that I was in a dangerous part of the world and might send me some kind of alert, rather than something that's necessarily an advert, something commercial. So there's good and bad to this. I think businesses have to have some models around how they drive their business, and Google's is clearly goes far beyond just advertising. They've got their hardware business through licensing Chromebooks, and they've got the Android business, and they've got their ability to sell cloud for enterprise. So I don't think this is too worrying. And for me, as you say, I've kind of grown up with it. I'm aware of what I do and what services I use. I don't read every bit of small print, but I'm fairly sensible about it. I think what we need to do is educate people about exactly how their information is used, and to be aware of those things.
Yeah, agreed. There was a couple of other interesting stories that came out this week that I loaded up here. One is about film download sizes to be determined by screen size, and this is a pricing model that's been postulated by Jeff Katzenberg, who's the director of some of the big movies like Shrek, Madagascar, Kung Fu Panda, and he was speaking at a global conference, the Milken Global Conference in California, when he postulated this as an alternative pricing model for movies. And while it sounds a bit ridiculous, the pricing model he suggested isn't as bad as you might think. When I read it first, I thought, he was talking about different prices for different, television screen sizes, and if you had a small TV, you'd get one price, and larger TV another. But it's not that. What it is he's talking about, like $15 for a movie in a movie theater. $4 for a TV screen up to 75 inches, which is enormous, and $1.99 for like a smartphone size screen. So that doesn't actually sound so bad in terms of a pricing model.
I've got a Chromecast. I've got a Chromecast in one room of my house and an Apple TV in another, and I download a movie or I access a film on my smartphone, and I cast it to a bigger screen. What does that do to the pricing? I'm actually intrigued by this because it clearly shows, and if you read the article, he's clearly thinking about, he's being fairly brutal about the fact that movies aren't a growth business, as he says, and he's trying to do some rethinking. I think it's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
But we don't pay, different amounts for other materials based on size. Other digital media based on size of screen or output. Should I pay more to play my music louder? Or I know that's a bad analogy, but
I think where this could be justified, Andy, while maybe not screen size, that might not be the right option, but maybe the resolution. So if you're getting a HD versus a 4K version, maybe you'd pay more for the 4K version than the HD version.
And really, you already do, in the sense that DVDs are cheaper than Blu-rays if you're getting it on physical media, and obviously you pay more to go and see the movie in the actual theatre. So I think that makes sense. But again, I think the
screen size is the runner.
Growth of streaming and the growth of the ability to kind of throw your media around your digital life, I think that's a really difficult thing for them to track and actually charge you for. It only really works if you're, if the studios continue to control the distribution, and you don't have these other people in the way like Apple and Google who disintermediate from.
Yeah, and I get what you mean. I do a lot of AirPlay from. I have an Apple TV as well, and I do a lot of AirPlay from the phone or the tablet to the TV, and it works really well. And as you say, that would totally disrupt this idea. But on the other hand, as I said, doing it by resolution as opposed to screen size might make sense. And you could justify it in terms of it's a larger download amount anyway. So I can see that making more sense. Other stories. Facebook has open sourced Pop for iOS, which is an animation engine which they've used for their paper application. Google has launched Docs and Sheets apps for iOS and Android. And Snapchat have relaunched or launched a new version of Snapchat, which is mixed in video and texting, and it's got a really nice interface to it. And there was one other I wanted to talk about. Facebook has come out with an anonymous login for developers for logging into applications. So a couple of things there. Oh, there's one other app actually that I came up with just a few minutes before the show started. I don't know if you got a chance to check this one out, Andy. This thing called Voto, VHOTO. And it's an app which goes through your movies on your phone, or you can create movies using it on your phone, and it scans through the movies to pull out what it thinks are, good quality photographs. So the idea is, why would you just take a photograph when you could take a video and then allow this app to scan through the video and find the perfect photo moment for you? And what it does is it goes through the video that you've recorded, picks out 8 or 10 what it thinks are good pictures, and allows you to share those. So there's the Voto, Facebook anonymous login, Snapchat's new application for it's such a big update to Snapchat. I think it's fair enough to call it that. Google having the Docs and Sheets as separate applications on iOS and Android. I think that's nice. And then Facebook open sourcing Pop. So a few stories to jump into there, Andy. Any of those grab your attention?
I think the Google one is interesting. I'm not entirely sure of the purpose of it. they haven't put presentations in there as well as docs and sheets.
They haven't put presentations in there, but they're saying they're going to, that's coming.
Ah, okay. So I mean, Google Drive, the app is still available, and you can still use that. Is it really valuable? I mean, the increasing appification and splitting up a function into individual apps or icons is really interesting to me, because we're moving away from the kind of the integrated office suites, the integrated development environments, as if you're a developer, to these kind of standalone experiences. Maybe they feel they can manage that series of code bases to improve the experiences individually. That's up to them. The Snapchat one I kind of looked at and thought, oh great, another video chat platform, because Skype and Google Hangouts and various other things aren't enough. But you're right. I mean, the UI looks really interesting. I actually got a Snapchat message from Snapchat yesterday announcing it in a short video clip. And then it said, come over to the App Store and get it. And I did. And unfortunately, they hadn't launched in the App Store yet, so they obviously were a little ahead of themselves. But I like the idea that the direction they're going with the text chatting, because you can have a text chat with somebody in Snapchat now, which you couldn't do before. Yeah. And after the conversation is finished, it all gets deleted in the same way that the life of a video or picture that you send to somebody is limited. That's an idea that I also heard recently from another startup, whose name escapes me, unfortunately. But they were talking about making conversations generally more ephemeral. Not having everything saved forever, even on their servers. They'll delete it after a period of time. Even if you don't go and pick up your messages, they will just expire, which I found interesting. So. Again, I like the innovation in that. I haven't tried the Snapchat video. I only have a few people that I actually ever communicated with on Snapchat, or generally used as it was generally an inbox for me, because I don't typically send people long-lived photos myself. So interesting pivot. Interesting to see how people pick it up and start using it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have Snapchat. One of the limitations I find with Snapchat is when you try and find friends in Snapchat, if you don't have their phone number, you can't find them. You can only find them by phone number, not by email address, or not by other things like Facebook or Twitter handles or things like that, which is unfortunate, because you don't always have people's phone number if you chat primarily with them via email or some other form.
Well, that's exactly where WhatsApp went as well, right? So WhatsApp is all about having phone numbers.
That's right. Yeah, it's a curious limitation, and it's an artificial limitation. I don't think it's necessary. But you talked about ephemeral conversations, and I'm just looking at my phone here, and I have a couple of apps on my phone which also do that. So there's one called Wickr, W-I-C-K-R, which is a confidential and ephemeral one, and another one called Confide. And I think I have one or two others, but those are the two anyway that already have ephemeral conversations. The conversations die. Particularly Confide, you have to literally run your finger over blocked out text in Confide to read it, and then when you take your finger, the conversation goes away. And it's all done, over encrypted channels as well. So there's some nice applications out there for doing that at the moment. But yeah, it's as you said as well. The Snapchat one, they've got a huge user base, so they're going to have a big network effect there, and the UI is really interesting as well. So I can see that gaining ground and starting to take off. Other stories. So the wearables market. You were talking about wearables earlier, and we'll be again in a second. But the wearables market is something that keeps growing, and it's something we bring up every week, because there's always new stories in this sector. And Amazon have obviously decided that this is a growing sector as well, because they've dedicated, excuse me, a whole section of their site to wearable technology. And in fact, they've called the site within Amazon Wearable Technology. And again, this is the site. I have it open here on the page. And the link will be in the notes. And you can see they have new and featured products, featured brands coming soon, Editor's Corner. They have a learning center where they bring you through buying guides. They have a video library, and they have an explore area with different devices in there. Everything from the kind of fitness ones that we talk about regularly on this show, through wearable cameras, smart watches, kids, family and pets as well. So every single kind of one you could think of. And speaking of kids, Leapfrog, the kids company, launched a kind of fitness tracker for kids, which is obviously a big market given the growing obesity in children these days. So I guess I don't know. It looks Leapfrog have been in trouble for a while. So this is them kind of trying to jumpstart sales again, and I think they've been in trouble because the likes of the tablet market have completely destroyed them. So this is them obviously trying to get back in again with this device. It's kind of a smartwatch for kids. I don't know whether it'll take off. Maybe it will. Maybe it's a version 1 and their version 2 or 3 might actually get somewhere. I don't know. And the other thing from the kind of wearable space that came out this week that I thought was interesting was this take apart of Google Glass. And you can see the kind of development pictures of Google Glass, how it kind of evolved to where it is today. And the take apart for the device, which currently goes for around $1,500, it's not on sale yet, but if you get on the program, you pay around $1,500 for a pair of Google Glass, if that's the correct terminology. Whereas in the take apart, when they looked at the parts that go to make it up, they said it costs less than $80 for the individual parts. So, Andy, in the wearable space, what's grabbing your attention?
So I'm actually speaking at an event in London this weekend as part of Sci-Fi London. My friend Paul Squires is putting on an event called Wearable Horizons at the BFI. So I'm going to be speaking about wearables. I was thinking about this the other day, and I'm realizing that I am myself wearing an increasing number. I have an jawbone up band here. I've got down on my waistband here, I've got a little activity tracker as well, so from WeThings, which also does my pulse and all kinds of other things. All of those stories, one thing I'll note is that Amazon once again is doing things in the US first, because you can't find their wearable technology section on the UK side, which is obviously local to me. But I think it's interesting for them, as usual, to kind of spotlight and categorize information. I think the interesting part about that is they've also added a learning center, so that they've got videos so people can actually go and understand how these things can apply to their lives. The Leapfrog technology band for kids is quite an interesting idea, and I think based on the article talking about how it intends to kind of incentivize kids to be active, I think it's a really fun idea, and we know that kids do love playing with technology. They make some interesting comments about personal data, because obviously you're dealing with very young children, I think age 4 to 10 or 4 to 7 or something they refer to in the article, and therefore the company is committing not to suck up the information to their own servers.
Yeah.
Which is great. I mean, that's entirely appropriate and what we want to see. We don't want to see people taking advantage of that kind of information. But apparently they're going to make it available to parents. So how they do that without, I mean, I'm assuming they will have to have it on their own servers and then have a parents with a website or something. So but they say they won't make use of it themselves. I mean, it's curious. It's in a kind of a grey area in terms of where that data is and who has access to it. But I like the idea.
I think the article wasn't clear because I was kind of confused as well, or it's not well thought out yet because it's like version 1. So I'm not sure where it falls down between those kind of two stools, but it sounds like it has a bit of potential, but I think either the article wasn't clear enough or it's not clearly enough thought out just yet. So something needs to happen there. But yeah, I think like yourself, I think with the proper presentation of it, like through a tablet-based app as well to work along with it, then and if they do that, as you say, how do they manage where the data is? So there's a couple of things I think they do need to work out there. But yeah, it could I think be a good idea long term. It's certainly something that's needed, something to help incentivize kids, kick a ball around or whatever.
Right.
You the Wearables Horizons conference that you're going to be speaking at. What's that about, Andy, and what will you be speaking at?
So I'm actually going to be talking about my personal experience. I had a health scare last year, which has caused me to kind of do a lot more self-quantification. So I'm just really going to talk from that through that experience about how I started to do that and try and manage my own health a lot better. But actually that then leads into, I've got an hour to speak. I'm not saying that I've got the whole thing planned out. It's going to be, as I described it to Paul, it'll be my kind of usual rambling pub conversation, but in front of an audience. So telling a little bit, hopefully, of my personal story, and then perhaps talking about, and acknowledging and sparking a bit of debate about things like personal data, ownership, visibility, privacy, and also just kind of look at the development of this space and the speed at which it's grown and where we go next. I don't have answers for those things, but I might have a few thoughts about where things might go. So that's really that's what it's about.
It's interesting because I'm on crutches at the moment, and have been for almost a year now. I have a problem with my right ankle, and it was that that got me into wearables as well, because I have the Fitbit Force here, and I use that to try and help me monitor the recuperation and the number of steps I do daily, and that kind of thing. As I had the operation in December, and I started wearing the Force just immediately before, and then right through the operation, and since I've been wearing it every day, and I've been looking to see how I am, getting on with the recuperation. If I do a lot of walking any particular day, how do I feel? What are the trends over time? That kind of thing. So it's very useful for that kind of stuff. It's also, I mean, when I look at the Fitbit dashboard for my health, I can see I'm connected to a number of other people who have Fitbits, friends, and I can see, they're doing, 10,000 steps a day and more, 60 to 70,000 steps a week, and I'm lucky if I get 2,000 steps a day. Never mind 10,000. But it's still so. I can't compare myself to them because I'm in a different situation, but I can still compare myself to myself over the last, since December, so over the last 5 months, and see how I've been doing.
So there's some other interesting questions that come up, and I hope to talk about these on Sunday at the event, which are around. So I'm now wearing two devices. One I was given by a friend, this Jawbone. I've only been wearing it a couple of weeks, but I've had the wee things for a while. You've got a Fitbit. I used to have a Fitbit. So you can conceivably add me to your dashboard. I no longer am logging any steps.
Right.
But what I would love to do is be able to actually still give you visibility of my activity from one of my other two devices by posting that across. Now, if this and that, IFTTT, actually enables you to post, for example, your WeThings scale data to Google Spreadsheets and things like that, or Google Calendar. In fact, I can also, I think, share my WeThings scale data to the Jawbone Up website, but not the other way around, or something along those lines. So the point is that I can't post to Fitbit, unfortunately. They don't have the API there, whereas WeThings and Jawbone obviously have done some integrations with other partners. But it's weird because my Jawbone, they also have a coffee app, so I can track how much coffee I'm drinking, which isn't something that WeThings lets me track directly. Whereas WeThings lets me track my health monitor, my health blood pressure, and in fact they've just added blood oxygen levels to their pulse tracker as well. So there's these kind of patches of information which would be interesting to combine together. But the integrations don't exist, the APIs aren't there. Everybody's trying to, as usual, build their own ecosystem and their own tower of data. But I do enjoy it, and in particular, I like the stuff that Up is telling me about my coffee intake and giving me some tips about that. So because I dramatically reduced. In fact, I came off coffee completely when I had my issue. So. So yeah, I'm fascinated by this whole quantified self idea.
Yeah. So am I. And one thing that I mentioned on the show last week, I think it was, that Facebook had acquired Moves, the application, the application that used the sensor in the phone. And one thing I did, I had Moves, but I had taken it off the phone. But I put it back on the phone last Friday, and I started tracking the number of steps I took based on what Moves thought I did, and based on what the Fitbit thought I did. And on Saturday, for example, I don't remember the exact numbers now, but on Saturday, for example, the Fitbit said I did about 5,500 steps or 6,000 steps, and the Moves application said I did 600.
Yeah, there's some. I mean, there are. I haven't seen such dramatic differences between my two devices, but they also both enable me to track my sleep. And whilst they typically will get the length of time I was asleep roughly right and roughly in line, they both have different ways of saying, well, he was deeply asleep, lightly asleep, or moving around and awake. And those typically don't match at all. So I find it fascinating to see these algorithms, and it's clear that none of them are 100% accurate. All of these things are just guidelines, and particularly when you've got something on the phone which potentially isn't active all the time because the operating system's putting it to sleep or whatever. What can you rely on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Moves is supposed to use the M7 chip in the iPhone, so that
is supposed to be active all the time. Indeed, I don't have the 5S, so I did note the Moves change. But there was also some interesting commentary around why Facebook acquired them and whether or not they're making a move into fitness or whether they're making a move into other aspects of tracking. So,
and there's been a huge amount of speculation, about what Apple is doing in this space.
Absolutely.
I mean, we know they're bringing out their HealthBook application, which is going to be like their what am I trying to say? Their Passbook. Thank you.
Passbook.
Exactly, Passbook for health. And now we see that Samsung are going to do something similar. They already have a health app, but they've announced now that they're having this big announcement a couple of days before Apple's HealthBook launch. So Apple would be launching it.
I read a brilliant tweet earlier today, which said, that he wonders whether Tim Cook deliberately puts Apple rumors out there just to troll Samsung and see which ones they're going to copy. I just thought, these guys keep trying to push ahead, but then, typically, as has happened with a few other devices, like the iPad, until Apple comes along and actually defines what the space is going to be, everyone else is kind of getting it wrong. So I'm interested to see that as well. I saw the other thing was that it's rumored that that Apple are going to monitor your health through your use of headphones. So,
yeah. I mean, they have a patent for sensors built into headphones. Will they bring them out ever or not? I don't know, but it could be another way of getting more data. So the data from, for example, the blood oxygen. It's not as easy to get from the wrist as it is to get from the inner ear. And similarly with blood pressure and things like that. If for people who already have a watch, who don't want to get a device like this, who don't think it's attractive or whatever, people wear headphones quite a lot. Especially for doing things like going out and jogging or walking and that kind of thing. It's totally acceptable. I can see the appeal of headphone-based sensors, and I think they would be additive rather than the whole thing. So I think we're going to get sensors in headphones, sensors in clothes, sensors in watches, sensors in waist fobs, sensors in ankle bracelets. I've seen as well. So this whole space is becoming huge, as you said earlier. It really is. We'll move on, and we'll move into the data center space. And there was news this week that Facebook is ready to begin its second data center in Iowa. It started a data center in a place called Altoona in Iowa early last year, or middle last year, and it's already started into its second data center there. The Altoona one uses 100% renewable energy, so good news there, and good to see them expanding it. Other news from this space, there was this article in the Data Center Knowledge publication on the 29th asking what the data center of 2025 will look like. And basically, the bottom line of this, it says that the data centers of the future will be, they'll have a smaller physical footprint. they'll be more cloudy, and they'll have a higher a higher power density. Data centers 10 years ago, the racks were around 1.5 kilowatts. It's now not unusual to have a 25 kilowatt rack. So, in 10 years' time, what's to stop it, having a 50 to 100 to a 250 kilowatt rack, apart from trying to dissipate the heat, I guess. So and more news in this kind of rough area. AMD are bringing out new chips to make devices more efficient, basically, which is always good news, and cut the power requirements. But they're not doing it by making the devices themselves more efficient at a hardware level. What they're doing is they're making more efficient using sensors and software to cut the power utilization when it's not as needed. And they say they're able to get some good levels of efficiency out of devices that would have been maximized at a hardware level, but by using clever software, they're able to make them more efficient.
Well, that's quite interesting, because I thought Intel had done something similar to this, but I get the impression from this article that that actually the AMD have some, as you say, something software-wise either on the chip or associated with it that is enabling it to do some kind of real-time analysis of what's going on. And I think the Intel solution was much more kind of the chip itself is much more kind of sipping the power rather than just burning it the whole time. I don't know exactly the difference, but I do remember yeah, okay. So there was a different. I do remember there was a big shift at Intel, within the last couple of years to move towards that, because obviously they wanted to target the mobile space and more efficiency.
Exactly.
As well.
Exactly. No, that was it, and so the sensors actually look at what applications are being used and decide whether or not they need to have the full power of the chip or not. And if they don't, then they just scale back the amount of power being used. Which in a mobile device, it's always good to have your battery last longer.
Right.
Your bottom line, no one wants their battery dying. And speaking of chips, but back to kind of data center space, Google showed off the IBM Power chip, and the IBM Power chip has been up until quite recently kind of proprietary, but IBM have tried to open it up and get more people using it, and then we saw at IBM's Impact event this week, Gordon McKean, who works for Google, showcased this board on his Google Plus page, which is a Google-built open power board using the IBM Power architecture. So that's interesting, and Intel have got to be sitting up taking notice of that, because it's up until now it's primarily the x86 architecture that Google have been using, as far as I'm aware. So to see them moving from that, or okay, they're not moving from it, they're trying it out.
As he says, I mean, the big difference here is that Power 8 is the new series of Power chips is little endian, so it was much easier for them to transition across, which is a big change to the previous generations of Power chips. Yeah, IBM's been on this path around Power for a number of years. Really, Power 7 they started to open up significantly, and it's really interesting to see that they've got buy-in from people like Google and an interest there. They're great processors. They're great. They've got some really smart people at IBM. I always loved working there. So it's good to see that people are experimenting and again, innovating, trying new things, and not just relying on ARM or Intel to save the day all the time.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one thing for Google to go away and experiment and try and build a board and have it be on the Power 8 architecture. But it's another for them to go to the IBM Impact event and keynote this in front of the 10 or 12,000 people who were at Impact, and all the people who watched the stream as well. That's right. A different level of commitment from Google to the IBM architecture. It's not just some guy hacking it away. This actually, I mean, for him to go and appear on stage at Impact speaks to a much deeper level of commitment, I suspect. I guess we'll see, but as you say, it's a good architecture. It's a highly efficient architecture. So, and IBM have this is on their roadmap for getting servers which are orders of magnitude faster and more efficient in 5 years' time than they are today. So the more people that start to use these kinds of levels of efficient architecture, the better for all of us, I think.
Absolutely.
And we're on the home stretch at this point. There's 3 more stories in the kind of miscellaneous class now. One is Skype has made group video calling free on Windows, Mac, and Xbox One, and coming to all platforms in the future. So that's interesting news. About
they must be running scared of Snapchat, don't you think?
I was going to say Hangouts, but yeah, Snapchat as well. It's like I say, it's about time. God Almighty! I mean, yeah. I've been using group video on Hangouts since it came out. What is it, 3 years ago now? And
Yep.
Why didn't Skype bring it out then? They had the technology; they could have done it. I guess it was just they didn't want to lose revenue, but. When it was as easy, and you do it in a Hangout just through a browser plugin. You don't need a separate application. I mean, yeah, really. Anyway, we'll let that one there. It's if you're tied into Skype or you really love Skype, well, great, you've got this option. If not, use Hangouts. Why wouldn't you? This, not really a story, more a photograph. Hard to see in this picture of it, but this is a photograph taken by NASA's Cassini spacecraft, and it's a view of the planet Uranus, which is just up there at the top of where my pointer is. I'll enlarge it in a second, but you're looking at it through the rings of Saturn. So it's a beautiful image. There's a larger version of it. If I just click there, now you can maybe see it a little better. This is the shot of Uranus. Anyway, the link will be in the notes. It's quite nice. I'm a bit of a sucker for these images of space and stars and galaxies and all these kinds of things. So I always click on these links, and it's fascinating to see pictures taken by these spacecraft and how well they can look. So the last story, completely different, is McDonald's.
Controversial.
Yeah. So McDonald's have brought out these new sustainability goals, and while I'm not a fan of McDonald's by any stretch of the imagination whatsoever, I'm not. Their food is crap. Let me just put that out there from moment one. Having said that, they are one of the world's largest food producers, whether you like it or not, which means that they have enormous purchasing power. So I think this is good. I think this is really good. I think it's really good from 2 aspects. The first aspect is that it sends a signal. It makes a statement. If you are going to buy fast food, are you better to buy from McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's or KFC or whoever the others are? Well, in this case, given this demonstrated commitment to sustainability that McDonald's are putting out there, I would argue that if you were going to buy fast food, you should do it from McDonald's for this reason. And the second thing I would say is that this generates an enormous demand for sustainably produced food. I mean, since McDonald's got hit in the head, 15 years ago or so, about their styrofoam packaging, they've actually had a reasonably good commitment to sustainability, and it's been getting better. But these aims that they have laid out in this commitment to sustainability, they go further than anyone else in this area by a long shot. So, like I say, not a fan of McDonald's by any stretch. Don't buy their food because I don't buy fast food. But if you are, I would argue that this makes them the leader in this space.
So, what about Chipotle? Because they're the ones that have been making a lot of noise about their sustainability story and also about their, general environmental credentials. And I kind of feel like the McDonald's thing is a response to that. Chipotle has done some great video campaigns and social media campaigns. And I think they get referenced very briefly at the beginning of that story. But I suspect that that is at least an element of McDonald's thinking. I agree that this is a good thing, good thing in a measured way, in the sense of whether or not you like the company. I think any very large company like that who's making that kind of commitment is should be welcomed for making that commitment. But yeah, whether or not you like their product is another matter.
Yeah. No, you're right about Chipotle. That's absolutely true. Where I see the difference here is the reach.
Yeah, agreed.
McDonald's got a much greater reach than Chipotle has. So, yeah, if they're emulating what Chipotle are doing, fantastic. Kudos to Chipotle and kudos to McDonald's for thinking, this is a good bandwagon to jump on. So, as you say, it's a measured welcome in that their food is crap, but hopefully it's better crap now than it was before. Okay, that's it for this week. Thanks everyone for your time and attention. I hope you enjoyed it. The links to all the stories we discussed today will be in the notes, and we'll be back same time, same channel next week. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your interest. See you then.